Okay, I really don't understand why this went viral. But I'm really happy it did, cause it's a great opportunity to tell you not only about the great Soviet classic movie, yes, movie. The version you guys got in the West was cut in half cartoon. But also about an interesting region-locked video game based on that movie. And you know how much I like telling you about video games. Hello YouTube, my name is Victor and you're watching the Russian Video Game Comrade show. In 1988, the Treasure Island movie hit the Soviet TV screens. It was made by Ukrainian studio Kyiv Nauchfilm by the order of the Soviet government. At first, Treasure Island intended to be a 100% cartoon. But when the director David Cherkassky and his team realized that they had only 2 years to make a 2-hour cartoon, they had to find a way to achieve this goal. And you just couldn't say no to the Soviet government. Well, in fact you could, but only once. They say that the standard time a studio needed to make a 15-minute long animation in the USSR in the 80s was around a year. It means Kyiv Nauchfilm had to make their work 4 times faster to achieve the goal. And as I know, it was a usual situation in the Union that time, no matter what type of work you did. You could film movies, build furniture or develop Soviet computers. And then one day some important person from the Kremlin could decide that you are capable of making some legendary thing in no time, they could show to the General Secretary of the CPSU. In Soviet English, this means Mr. President. And obviously, they didn't care how much time did you need to make it. They had their own plan and everyone had to follow it. Otherwise, you're not only fired, but with a big chance the only job you can get after this dismissal is a janitor's job. So in the case of such an emergency, everyone tried to manage the order somehow, but still with the best quality they could. Because they just couldn't understand how a person could work slipshod, no matter what. That is how Soviet Treasure Island transformed into half a cartoon and half a live-action movie, as the real-life filming was faster than making the animation. Still, this decision made the movie more mature, and maybe even was the main reason it was adored not only by the kids, but with the adults too. Since then, Kyiv Nauchfilm's Treasure Island became an all-time classic for Soviet and post-Soviet people, and nobody could even think there was a person who didn't know about it. As I've realized throughout my research for this video, even you guys in the West at least could know about this fabulous movie, as in 1992 Mr. Cherkassky re-edited and re-released it in the USA under the Return to Treasure Island name. The most interesting thing here is, despite it was dubbed in English, a whole 34 minutes of the movie were cut out of it. And as you can realize, it were all the live-action parts of it and files containing information on the characters. And considering those parts not intended to exist at all at first turned out to be one of the most fun parts of the movie, there is nothing surprising in the fact that Soviet Dr. Livesey had to wait for his moment of glory for a whole 30 years. Today you can watch the full feature with English subtitles on YouTube, by the way. I understand that for most of you who were already interested in the Soviet Treasure Island, I hardly told anything new. But this little introduction was intended to let you know how we were surprised by the recent sudden boom of the Walkin Rom popularity. But the thing most of you definitely didn't know, there was not only a movie, but also a Treasure Island video game. Yes, it wasn't made in the Soviet times, as you can already know from my previous videos. Computers and consoles spread over Russia, Ukraine and most of the other post-Soviet countries only in the late 90s. It was made in 2005. But the most interesting thing here, it was made in cooperation with a lot of people who made the original Treasure Island movie in the 80s, including Mr. Cherkassky himself. I'm sure a lot of you guys who are interested in video games know about the Chasm the Rift game. It's a 1997 first-person shooter developed by the Ukrainian Action Form studio and released by no more no less GT Interactive Software. A worldwide release of a game made in any post-Soviet country was something incredible back in the 90s. Chasm the Rift was released the same time first Quake did, and in some features and technical solutions, it was even more advanced than the first real id Software's 3D action, despite it was mostly made in 2.5D, as Doom and Duke Nukem 3D were. For instance, in Chasm the Rift there were characters' facial animations, and even Quake 2 still didn't have this. Or you could shoot a limb of an enemy, despite it's considered that the first game where it was implemented was Soldier of Fortune in 2000. But no, it was already a thing in Chasm the Rift in 1997. Later, the same guys made the Carniverse video game series, and if you haven't heard of Chasm, maybe you did about this one. And in 2005, Action Forms, together with a Russian 1C publisher, the guys who later released new King's Bounty games, made a gift for all the fans of the Soviet Treasure Island movie. They've released the Treasure Island video game. The most astonishing thing here, just by the quick look on it, you could immediately realize it wasn't a cheap ripoff in an attempt to make some more money on the all-time favorite franchise. And this approach was very common in Russian video games of that time. It looked the same as the cult Kiev Naучfilms movie. The father of the Soviet Treasure Island movie was stated as the game's director, the animator Radna Sakhaltuyev made the arts for both the movie and the game, and even most of the voiceovers of the game's characters were made by the same people who voiced the characters of the movie, including Viktor Andrienko and Evgeny Paperny, Captain Smollett and Dr. Livesey, respectively. Sounds too good to be true, right? Well, yes and no simultaneously. On one hand, this is really not only a well-made game, but a movie story follow-up game made by the same people, so it even can be considered canonical. On the other hand, it's such a short game, it can be finished in merely half an hour. And it's not a joke, a full-price video game, twice the price for Russia to be precise, that can be finished in less than an hour. And this is not a NES game half-an-hour case, when you can finish a game fast, but only after a lot of training to nail it. Like, for example, Ninja Gaiden. It's a game that you start, fall in love with, and then, out of nowhere, you're already watching the closing titles. I've already told you that most of our video games were bootlegs, so yes, it wasn't a $50 purchase. But again, in our reality, it was not only a full-price game, but a full-price double CD game. Remember I told you how our game price depended on the quantity of CDs it was released on. This Treasure Island game for some reason was put on 2 compact discs, I think simply to earn additional profit. Remember the story about Red Comrade's point-and-click adventure released on 3 CDs, however later pirates distributed the bootleg version of the game only on 1 CD and nothing was missing there. I assume the same thing was made here. Additional CD with some kind of garbage on it just to sell the game more expensive. The installed game with an OCD patch takes up only 750 megabytes of hard disk space. Russian, well, more like post-Soviet business in all its glory. The most horrible thing here is the fact that the game itself is really good, but it's look like it's not a game, but barely a demo. The game starts where the movie has ended. The treasure is on our ship and we are ready to set sail, but the pirates somehow are back in action and take over all our crew. All the crew except Jim Hawkins. And he's, or should I say, we are on the mission to save everyone and get the treasure back. I agree that the plot seems to be too simple, but when you see all your favorite characters from all-time classics, you can't think of anything else except, yes, give me more! The game itself is a kind of a mix-up of a platformer and simple fighting game with several simple puzzles on the way. The game is split into 3 chapters, 2 on the ship itself and 1 on the island where we will visit our beloved locations from the movie once more. Jim can walk, jump, crawl, fight, and also has several power-ups that are intended to help him on his journey. Early in the game, Jim finds a note from Dr. Livesey, who tells that all of the crew was taken back to the island.
Нас захватили в плен и скоро отвезут на остров. Джим, мой мальчик, постарайся спрятаться. Мы что-нибудь обязательно придумаем. Доктор Ливси.
Спрятаться? Ха-ха, как бы не так. Я доберусь до острова и спасу всех.
So off we go to the rescue. To do this, we have to get ourselves a boat. Upon achieving this goal, we will learn how to play the game and will be introduced to one of my favorite characters in the game, the Jackstraw.
Привет, чучело.
Я не чучело, я учитель. Это ты, чучело.
Сейчас я тебя стукну, и мы посмотрим, кто из нас чучело.
Humor was the main feature of the Treasure Island movie and remains to be the main thing in the game. It's really a shame that this game was never translated to English, and without knowing the language, the main charm of it will be unattainable for those who don't understand Russian. After all, aside from the humor, favorite characters and the nostalgia, this is just a simple, yet good and very short platformer. I understand why the guys who made it didn't think of a Western localization, but still I'd really wish there was one, especially today, in the time of the Dr. Livesey's internet renaissance. I mean, just look at this art style and animations and compare them, for example, to the Anti-Drug Addiction, the game we talked about last time. And these are the games from the same time period, and you can see the difference with the naked eye. This one is fantastic, and this one is simply a piece of shit, like most of the post-Soviet games from the mid-2000s. When you arrive on the island, the platforming part of the game expands a little. To be honest, this part of the game reminds me of another interesting Russian game from the 1992, The Crow. I even thought that I've already told you about it in one of the previous episodes, but it seems that this video was in another castle. I will fix this soon, I promise. Anyway, the Swamp episode of the Treasure Island game reminds me of an old Russian MS-DOS game that was really challenging back in the day, and the first time I saw the Swamp here, I thought, finally, that's it! Now is the time for things to get real. But unfortunately, no. Despite all the tricky platforming, collectibles in the hard-to-get areas and some new puzzle gameplay elements, there are a lot of checkpoints here. Besides, Jim has infinite lives and the game stays a piece of cake. And it's a shame. They could make this a little challenging, and it will be much more interesting to play the Treasure Island game then. But I assume this was the game for children, so they made it easy on purpose. When you save Captain Smollett a little later, the Treasure Island game will remind you of one of the most famous Blizzard's game in Russia once more. I mean once more, if you saw my episode about the Anti-Drug Addiction game. Yes, you understood it right. After the rescue, you'll be able to control not only Jim, but the captain as well. Smollett can't climb the lianas, but has a really powerful sword strike that can get through the obstacles Jim couldn't before. And for a brief period of time, you have not only to switch between them and advance the party to the next screen deciding which character can do what, but also to time the actions of both of the playable characters to solve some more puzzles on their way back to the ship. I don't really understand why Captain Smollett was the only prisoner in the fort, as Dr. Livesey told us all of them were captured and taken back to the island. But this is the thing we'll never know. As unfortunately, after a several minutes long trip back to the ship, the last chapter will start and it will be very similar to the first one. Several more fights with both characters and Captain will order us to load our ship's cannon and set sails. 10 minutes later approx, the game will be over and all the rest of the crew will be on board. The only thing I need to mention here is a clever boss fight where you have to figure out a right hit sequence so the pirate won't drop his pipe and blow up the ship. The only shame is that this sequence contains only 2 hits. But still, it's at least interesting to find out which ones you have to execute. Overall, I really think that the concept of this game is simply awesome. Just imagine how good this game could be if they put a little more effort in it, made it a little more challenging, expanded the idea of controlling several characters with different abilities, made more levels where you had to rescue all the crew and then fight the final pirate boss with the joint forces. But unfortunately, we didn't get any of this. Why? Oh man, I wish I knew. I can only assume that the reason was something like the one I've told you about in the beginning of this episode regarding the Treasure Island movie. Either time or money. Or both, yes. Maybe Action Forms was given too short development timeline, or the budget of the game was really low, or maybe they even planned to make a decent game, but then, out of nowhere in the middle of the development, they were told to release the game now. Who knows? But to be honest, this is the case when I'm really happy with the fact we at least got this demo-like game instead of nothing. As in my opinion, the great franchises as the Soviet Treasure Island movie have to live eternally no matter what. Either as a short video games from 2000s or as new funny memes we've got today. But aside all of this, you have to know that if I bought a game for half an hour for the price I could get both Doom 3 and Psychonauts back in the day, I would really be pissed. Thank you for watching this episode. I really hope you liked it. Please press thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and maybe even consider to support me on Patreon if you like the videos that I do. The link to my Patreon is in the description. It's my Russian channel's Patreon page Cozy Basement, as in today's reality I'm not sure if I will be able to make a new one for the Russian Video Game Comrade show. So if you want to support my videos, just pick a tier you're happy with there. Thank you for your generous donations in advance. Have a nice day, good luck!